listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast, a proud member of the CLNS group of podcasts. Make sure you download and subscribe to all of those of our great podcasts to get great Patriots content every day. But it's your guy Pat Lane here with my guy Matt St. Jean. And Matt, the initial 53 roster is out, and there's not a ton of surprises. One, I think, fairly big surprise. Outside of that, it was pretty much chalk. We got most of it right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big difference is that we're going to get into. It's going to be Braden Swinson. It's going to be that Kyle Duggar made it, and it's going to be Kendrick Bourne, and then maybe Elijah Ponder. I think those are the four you kind of isolate here as shocker.
Yeah,
just surprises in some capacity. Which one do you want to start with?
I think the first one we start with is Kendrick Bourne. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, forget the fact. And listen, I like the fact that he's a veteran and he knows the system and blah 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 blah. They like him, and he was running with the threes. He got hurt a month ago. And he hasn't been on the field for a month. And before he was on the field for a month, he was running with the threes. And so it's like, what are we doing with Kendrick Bourne on the team? It doesn't make any sense to me. And listen, maybe you want to, we'll get into Braden Swinson, but maybe you said, I don't love the guys in front of him or whatever the case may be. But like, I don't see where Kendrick Bourne fits on this roster.
I kind of have two separate thoughts on the Kendrick Bourne thing. I think the first of these is that I only assumed that there was going to be room for multiple veteran high floor receivers, which I think that's Bourne and Hollins to me. Guys who have played in the system before, who should know what they're doing, who should be professional, who are not going to blow you away, but who are competent NFL receivers who you can put out there if the things don't work. I didn't think there was going to be room for multiple of those guys if any of the young players played well. And the fact that Efton Chisholm and Javon Baker played well enough to make this roster, and they kept both veterans, to me was surprising.
Right.
I mean, you see 8 wide receivers on the roster, and it's hard not to think that there are more moves coming in the coming days, because you can't find enough snaps for 8 wide receivers in the NFL, especially when a couple of these guys don't play special teams. And it's like Kendrick Bourne's not going to be a special teamer. He's at this point in his career, he's worse than Mac Hollins as a receiver, and he doesn't play special teams. So like, what is he bringing here?
Right.
And same with comparing him to Booty. And then also, this is an offense that's going to use fullback and multiple tight ends. So there's going to be less room for receivers out there than in a typical offense where, if you were going to go 4 wide all the time, maybe you can say, all right, there's room for this, but there just aren't the snaps. So I think something's got to give there. And my second thought on this, I think we've had a general mentality here that you can't make the club from the tub. And that seems to be a Mike Vrabel thing. He wants guys who take care of their bodies and who are healthy. And it stands out to me that not only does Kendrick Bourne make it, but I'm going to sneak another veteran in here. Jelani Tavai doesn't make the roster, but he does go on injured reserve designated to return. So Jelani Tavai can come back to this team soon. Right. The fact that both of those guys kind of made the club from the tub, so to speak, tells me, it's one of two things. Either they don't think the roster is very good and they just thought these are better than the other guys, so we're going to keep them, or once they get healthy, we want to see what they can do for us because we're interested in that. Or like they just see a real role for these guys. I mean, it's not like it has happened before where a guy is like a question mark coming into camp where you're not sure where he fits on the team. Then he's injured in camp. And then you get to the regular season and he's healthy. And it's like, oh, he's good to play and he's going to be out there. Like maybe Tavai is someone where, oh, he's good to go. And all of a sudden he's just going to be a starter and he's back to who he was in week 5 or whatever. And we just don't really ever think about this thing again. Obviously, a very different situation, but like the Randy Moss thing, like he got hurt, nobody sees him in the preseason. It's like, all right, what's going on here? And then week 1, I don't expect that.
Right, incredible, yeah.
Yeah, I don't expect that to be Kendrick Bourne, but like maybe they just think that had he been healthy, he would have been one of the winners of the camp battles from what they have seen that we don't have access to. And the second that he's healthy, that'll just kind of become apparent to everyone, and everyone goes, oh, okay, I see this now. He'd have to be pretty freaking good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only issue for me is that I just don't. Even if you say, okay, I think he's good enough to be on the roster. Well, but is he better than? Okay, let's make the argument he's better than Efton Chisholm. Sure, and I think that this, to me, this is what they're trying to do. That they're trying to move Kendrick Bourne, and so instead of cutting him and getting nothing back, they're holding him on the roster as a placeholder to try to move him, right? I don't know if they're going to or not, but I think maybe a team was kind of interested. I don't know. Let's wait and see what happens, this and that. And the Patriots said, well, screw it. We're just going to keep him because, yeah, we like the guys that are there, but we think that we can get something back for – now, listen, it might be a late round swap. It might be Bourne in a 7th for a 6th. Or Bourne in a 6th for a 5th. But it's better than nothing. And we don't love Truman Jones. We don't love Braden Swinson. And we're not tied to those guys. And so we can cut a guy like that, hope to get him back in the practice squad while we're trying to make this Kendrick Bourne move. I don't see it making sense outside of that. Because again, okay, let's say that, that he's there because we think he can be an actual player. Is he getting snaps over Mac Hollins or Kayshon Boutte or Demario Douglas or Stephon Diggs or Kyle Williams? That's 5 receivers. He's your wide receiver 6. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's just, and you kept Chisholm, deserved a spot on the roster, so you kept Chisholm on the roster. So now you're at 7 receivers, and it's like, what are we doing? And I'm not even counting Javon Baker as a receiver because he's not on this team as a receiver. That's just not who he is, and that's okay. But he's not. So everyone says they kept 8 receivers, but they technically did. They also technically kept 6 safeties, but Mike Reese will tell you they kept 5 safeties. So that's
and 7 wide receivers is still a lot.
7 wide receivers is still a lot.
When we were making our projections, there was uncertainty about if there was room for Javon Baker on this team, if there were enough roster spots for him.
Right.
Which, this whole thing might just be they felt kind of how we did, that there weren't necessarily 53 guys they loved coming out of camp. And they were like, we don't really need 8 receivers, but we just think Bourne's better than the other guys who might take this spot. And maybe they're looking at it like if Diggs is banged up and Pop's had been someone with durability issues, they're like, okay, if these 2 guys get banged up, we want to have someone who can go out there if, the rookie isn't ready. But like that still is like, all right, so we're going to, if guys get hurt, we're going to run a Kayshon Boutte, Kendrick Bourne, Mac Hollins wide receiver lineup. Like, right.
Just doesn't.
Yeah. And that's like, I don't know. You can get that level of play from a practice squad guy. Like put Giles in the practice squad and then call him up if you need him. And I don't think there's going to be that much of a difference between he and Bourne at this point in their careers, especially if you're only asked them to play, 2 to 4 games during a season.
Right. Yeah.
Or make a move. Like and this is why it feels like something else is coming, which might just be Bourne. Like Bourne might not be a Patriot by the time you're listening to this tomorrow. If you're listening to this on your drive home from work tomorrow,
right?
But that could be very well be the case.
That's certainly a possibility. That is certainly a possibility. So we'll see what happens. But again, it was a bizarre situation for me. I do think if you want to talk about the guys that made the roster, there was a lot of discussion about 2 guys in particular, Kyle Duggar and Anthony Jennings. And Duggar and Jennings both guys that were extended by the previous regime, both guys that are Jennings actually may have been extended by Belichick, but that's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. Either way, they have been extended by the people that came before Vrabel. So not this regime. They didn't seem to fit into the system. And the argument for them being here, and you made this argument when we did the 53-man roster projection. A lot of people have made this argument. I think it makes a lot of sense. I had Duggar off just because I thought things were trending to him not being on the roster. And I had Marcus Epps on instead. And so they just flipped Marcus Epps for Kyle Duggar, and I'm okay with that. I think that makes sense. But the argument is this team lacks depth everywhere, across the board, at all positions. And so when you don't have, and Phil Perry's kind of said this, where you get like 47, 48 like actual NFL players on the roster. And two of those guys are Anthony Jennings and Kyle Duggar. Now, Kyle Duggar isn't going to be an every down safety for you, but he can play safety for you at times, and he can be a valuable asset to you at times in spot situations, in the correct situation. Can't put him in space anymore. Can't. But he can do some things for you. And I look at that and say, okay, sure, keep him one more year because he is an NFL level talent. And even if he only plays very sparingly, that could be, he could help out here and there. And so I don't necessarily hate it. I thought Anthony Jennings kind of the same thing. Yeah, Anthony Jennings is going to be an every down player for you, but he might be able to come in and play a little bit for you on the edge. And I think that it makes sense to have guys like that on your roster, especially when you don't have a lot of depth. And I will also say, two veterans who had signed pretty good deals, who were playing deep into the fourth quarter in preseason games. And they weren't half-assing it. They weren't bitching to the media afterwards. They weren't not showing up to things. They were team players working their butt off, trying to make the team better. And I think that attitude goes a long way, especially with a guy like Vrabel. And I think that helped them get there. And obviously their play on the field over those preseason games helps as well. But I thought the way that they approached it helped them make the team.
When I look at someone like Duggar, and I think, first of all, I fully agree about the leadership for both of them and the maturity. I also think, with Duggar, a factor in this is that he's rehabbing from an injury and a surgery and everything. And it's possible. Like, I don't think he looked very good weeks 1 and 2 of the preseason. Weeks 1 and 2 of the preseason, he looked like someone that you just can't put on the field in an NFL game. Week 3 of the preseason, he looked a lot more like he belonged out there. I thought he looked a little bit more athletic. So maybe they're just saying, you know what, we don't think he's good right now. But, the trade-off that you are weighing is saving a little on his contract, which if you move him without any adjustments to the contract, you don't end up saving a massive amount of money this year. You're kind of stuck with what you're stuck with to a degree. So because you're not going to save a massive amount, it's, do we want to save a little, free up the roster spot, and use it for someone else, a mystery box, whatever it is? Or do we want to take the chance that with a couple more weeks to rehab this, and a couple more weeks in practice, he can get closer to what he was and be useful for us? And I think, I was very much on the you can't put this guy on the roster thing with Duggar 2 weeks ago. Saw him play against the Giants, and he was on my roster projection until the reports they were trying to trade him, at which point I assumed they were just going to cut him.
Yeah.
But they decided to stick with it. And, I think it's going to be day-to-day, week-to-week with him if he's on this team. But if he shows something, he can be a depth safety for you, and maybe a special teamer, and, a fourth safety and something like that. So hopefully he's able to help the team there. As for Jennings, I just think, and I think this will get us right into the Ponder and Swinson conversation too. Of the guys who were in the depth group at edge this preseason, Anthony Jennings played the best. I don't think there's really any doubt about that.
Yeah.
Hard to leave a guy like that off the roster. He might not be the ideal scheme fit, but I don't know. he can play football, and he's good in the locker room. So, like, I just don't. If you're a better team, then you probably get rid of him. But they're not a better team, so I don't know how you can leave him off this roster. And I think there's a real chance that Anthony Jennings is going to play on Sundays. Like, he plays special teams too. He's probably going to be your fourth defensive end because I expect that it'll be Harold Landry, Keon White, Caleb Von Chasen, and then probably Anthony Jennings there.
Right.
The real surprise to me, which I think we look back, shouldn't have been a surprise. Braden Swinson not making this team, and this is someone who, was rated as by the consensus board was a top 75 player. I think he was 68 on the consensus board in the draft. Falls to the 5th round. Patriots get him there. We basically didn't hear his name all camp. He was playing deep into the 4th quarter of preseason games. He didn't look like he didn't belong in the games, but he also didn't flash. He looked average. And, he's even though he was rated like a 3rd round pick, he isn't. He's a 5th round pick. And clearly they just didn't see enough from him to make this roster, which I think is pretty damning for him to not make this roster. You can't say he didn't have the opportunities. He was well positioned to be someone not just on the roster, but competing for snaps on this team during the regular season.
Yeah.
And to not make it, I think is pretty disappointing given, the reputation he had coming in. And there's really no one to blame but him on that, I don't think.
I mean, they kept 5 edge players, right? Like, they kept 5 edge players, and Anthony Jennings beat him out for a spot. And that's really what it comes down to, is that at the end of the day, Swinson, and I think what you said was perfect about Swinson, because he didn't look terrible, right? But he never really did anything. He made like a nice stop on a run once that was called back because of a penalty. He made like a few kind of nice plays in the run and so on and so. But like, he didn't really do anything. And so we just all assumed, well, he's a developmental guy and he needs a year to develop. And maybe the Patriots looked at it and said, he doesn't bring enough to the table. We don't see it. Right? Now, maybe he goes somewhere else and they get that out of him. Maybe he just sticks here on the practice squad and he comes back next year and, all of a sudden he looks good. And who knows, right? He might just need that year of development. But right now, he doesn't seem like one of the best 53 guys on the roster. And that says a lot with the way the roster looks right now. It's not the best roster out there. And so he just didn't do anything when he was out there. And so you look at it and say, well, you're going against 3rd stringers. You can't get a sack. You can't even pressure the quarterback. Like, what are we talking about here, man? He
had some pressures against Minnesota, but it was like he is fine. He looked like a 3rd stringer. I think the more telling thing with this too, like, he was someone who there were red flags, I think, about his makeup and his character, his football character,
right,
work ethic and all that. And, one thing, I'm going to call back to our draft show, our post-draft show. I think it was Elliot Wolf said that one of the reasons they felt good at making the selection with Swinson, someone who was off a lot of teams' boards, but that they got to see him in a practice environment. They scouted him in person at a practice, and they felt comfortable with it, so they were willing to make the pick. Well, clearly it doesn't. Whatever they saw seemed like it did not translate.
Yeah.
Because the other factor here, if you're looking at Braden Swinson versus Kendrick Bourne for the last roster spot on this team, I think the only way you can argue Bourne over Swinson is if you don't internally think that Swinson has a lot of developmental value. And if you don't think he has a lot of developmental value, it's one of two things. Either he's just not as good of an athlete as you thought when you drafted him, and immediately it's like, well, this guy just has no ceiling. Like, he's already as good as he's going to be. We're going to cut bait now. Or I think more likely in this case, there's some kind of personality concern, and you don't think it's going to work. And I do think that if your defense of picking this guy was, well, we scouted him in person, we saw him in that environment, and on that one day at practice, he looked good, so we're fine drafting him. It doesn't pan out for you. obviously this is just 1 5th-round pick, so not the end of the world. But I said at the time there were some alarm bells going off that you're picking a guy based off of one interaction like that. And the other guy who was like that from this draft class, who a day 3 guy, was Kobe Minor, who also didn't make this team. He was also someone they scouted from practice. And those are 2 dots I connect right away that, all right, at the time I said if they're making evaluations here based off what happens one day at practice when they happen to be there, there's a lot of room for error there. And this is 2 day 3 guys who got cut, which happens all the time. So I'm not going to read more into it than is there. But also, this happened twice in the same draft, and you don't love that.
Yeah, the Kobe Minor pick, I think. I mean, it's Mr. Irrelevant. Like, it doesn't really matter that much. I do think there were other guys they could have taken. You look at some of these UDFAs, even around the league, that are making rosters, and you're looking at it saying, "Man, that guy could have been better." But nevertheless, I think Braden Swinson, and we talked about this all the time. You draft by the consensus board, right? If you were to just draft by the consensus board, he was a steal and a half, right? And it was not like the Patriots are the only teams that liked him. No. Yes, there were some teams that were out on him, but the scouting community saw something from him, thought that he was, worthy of that type of pick, and the Patriots got him significantly later. And obviously, again, I don't know. Do we not see the work ethic in the classroom? Do we not see him? We don't see that behind the scenes stuff. So I don't know if there's more of that going on. I think what will be very telling about the Braden Swinson thing, I think will be really telling, is if he clears waivers, do they bring him back to the practice squad?
Yeah, because I think it's both parts of that are intriguing to me.
Right. So, does he get back? Right. Does he clear waivers? Number one. And then number two, do we do that? Do we, bring him back on the practice squad? So it's just interesting. So we'll see what they decide to do. But yeah, that was fascinating to me. And again, Truman Jones, I don't think was necessarily a surprise. I had him making the roster, but he's a guy that I can see them bringing back onto the practice squad. I don't think anyone's going to be jumping over hoops to try to get him, clear waivers and everything like that. So I just think, that's the way I look at it. So, we'll see. And there was one other guy that I think was, I guess, do we want to talk about Cole Strange? I think Cole Strange, like we kind of talked about this already, but Cole Strange did not belong on this roster.
He was another one of these guys who came in, penciled in, not very lightly, but penciled into a starting job.
Mm-hmm.
And he lost a spot on the roster because he didn't play well. And I think we thought this was a positive, the Cole Strange that we saw in 2022 makes this roster. He's not a great player, but he'd be one of the top 9 offensive linemen out there, and he'd make this roster. I don't know if that guy's in there anymore after the injuries. He looks significantly worse. Struggled at center too. Like snapping the ball's an issue for him. It's just a mess right now for him, which thinks he got put into the spotlight by being taken earlier than he should have gone. And he's never been able to live up to that. But he still was valued as like a 3rd round or late 2nd round guard. And those guys usually play well.
Mm-hmm.
And he never even lives up to that. So hopefully he can find something somewhere else. But it looked rough this camp. And at this point, it shouldn't be a surprise at all that he didn't make the team, just given his performance.
No, and we had him off the roster, on our roster projections. And I think that kind of makes sense, the way he's been playing. I think the big thing for me,
he's been off our roster for probably like 2 weeks now.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. I think the big thing for me that I think, when I look at a guy like Strange, right? He is a situation where, take Logan Mankins. Everyone hated the Logan Mankins pick when it happened. Right? When it happened, everyone was like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you drafting a guard in the 1st round? Well, no one questioned that when he was the best guard in the league for multiple years, right? Until they traded him in 2014. And, that's who he was, right? And so if Cole Strange had developed, and maybe even if he's not one of the best guards, but if he had developed into a guy that, was a very good starting guard, I don't think people would have had as much of a problem with it. Now, I know a lot of us on the outside looking in that really pay attention to that roster building, roster construction, would have still been upset about the Shaq Mason, Joe Tooney, Ted Karras whole bit, right? So of course we would have been upset about that. But if you get a very good starting guard in the first round, you're looking at it saying like, well, okay, like maybe it's not ideal, but like this guy we can pencil in as a starter for 10 years, that's good. Like, but unfortunately, you take a risk at a position that isn't a very high needs position. You create a need where there wasn't one, and then you fill it unnecessarily early with a guy that was going to be there later if you wanted to draft him. And then he fails. And he's just like, one after another. You're just like, well, what are we doing here, man? Like, this is just stupid. And so that's the frustrating part where it's like, it's not just the fact they drafted the guard in the first round. It's the fact that they drafted a guard in the first round and then missed on it. Because ultimately, missed badly, real badly. And you didn't even get, you got a few games of like starting level play from him. Yeah. And outside of that, he's been basically unplayable his whole career. And that's just like a complete disaster. And again, I go back to that draft. If you go back to that draft in 2022, the Patriots traded out at 21. The Chiefs draft Trent McDuffie at 21, an all-pro corner. The pick after the Patriots pick at 29, 30, the Chiefs draft again, and they draft George Karlaftis, who just signed a huge deal and is a very good edge player. I don't know if he's not an all-pro for sure, and he's fringe Pro Bowl, edge defender. But nevertheless, he's a good player. And you drafted Cole Strange when you had a shot at both of those guys. And you're just like, that sucks. It's just like, that awful. Really sucks.
And then at this point where you really do need a left guard that he can't even temporarily fill that spot, he isn't good enough to try to compete for that spot during the regular season. It's disappointing. Definitely subpar. So, then that left guard spot is now going to be one of the big question marks this year. We assumed with guys on the roster that they might be able to find something. Maybe they can. Maybe Bradbury's good enough and Wilson plays left guard. And by week 8, we don't really care about this anymore. But if left guard's going to be a hole for you this season, the miss on that pick is going to be something that really, really stands out.
Well, you think about it, right? And who's left from the 2023 draft class? Is that just...
They got 6 guys.
They have 6 guys left from that class? Well, because
it's Gonzalez, White, Mapu, Behringer, Booty, Pop. That is the best draft that Bill had near the end.
It absolutely was. And I don't think it's even up for debate. And it's funny, because Gonzo Duke said worst draft class ever. And 2022, the only guy you have left from 2022 is Marcus Jones. And the rest of it's just trash, just absolute trash.
And you look at how it, not just what happened, but how it happened with some of those. It's just
Jack Jones, you knew it was going to happen with Jack Jones, and it happened.
When it's reach in the first, reach in the second, third was a fit. Marcus Jones, I think, has lived up to being a 3rd-round pick. That's fine.
Right.
4th of Jack Jones was a reach. I don't think Pierre Strong was a reach, but just a bust. I think honestly what the return you got with Zappy for a 4th-round pick is probably fine. A couple games of mid-tier play. But then Kevin Harris was just a guy when he was in New England. Sam Roberts was just a guy for a little bit. Jason Hines never made the team, and Stuber, I don't think he was just
atrocious. Stuber, I believe, stuck around on the practice squad and was one of the worst offensive linemen I've ever seen in my entire life. He just couldn't play.
He played 7 games for the Bengals last year.
Look at that. Jeez. Told you
his first NFL snaps. So he was in New England with our offensive line for a couple of years and never got on the field. Which, that draft is just bad process and results that live up to that process all throughout in your first draft with what you thought might be a franchise quarterback after making the playoffs. It's just
Right.
That is I wouldn't say a franchise killing draft, but that's a GM killing draft, and it did.
Yeah.
And
I think,
and then you add in that was kind of, you look at the 4-year cycle that's the end of, and you go back to like 2018 and 2019, where it's like, all right, in theory, you're trying to replenish guys who might be leaving from those classes, and the fact that you missed on a lot of guys in those 2 years too is like, okay, well, now you're trying to fix holes that have been open for a little bit, and you whiff on all of them, and you just can't do that. Like that's how you get such a quick turnaround between a draft that bad and the GM and coach getting fired.
right. And we talked about this, before. And so I don't, we don't have to necessarily go back over it again. But I think one of the things that's important to point out is that, we talk about the draft classes being bad. And of course, that impacts the top of the roster, right? That impacts your good, your explosive, your blue chip, quote unquote, players, right? But the Patriots have done a pretty nice job the last few years, and of course, we'll see what happens with Will Campbell. But the Patriots have done a nice job certainly the last 2 years, of bringing in those types of players, right? With Drake May and Christian Gonzalez, you feel like those guys can be your blue chip cornerstone players. However, what's happened is that everything outside of the first round has been absolute garbage. And so it's not the top of the roster that has suffered. It's the bottom of the roster that has suffered.
Or the middle class.
Yes, but your backups should be your draft picks. They should be your day 2 and day 3 picks should be all of your backups. They should fit into those roles. And they haven't done that. And so when you look at it and say, they drafted Marcus Bryant in the 7th round this year. Now, if Marcus Bryant was our starting right tackle, I think we'd be a little concerned. But the fact that Marcus Bryant is a swing tackle for us, we're looking at saying, oh, this guy can play football. All right, he can play. He can do something, and so that's something that's unexpected for us because it hasn't happened in the last 3 or 4 years where we're getting actual depth pieces. And so it's going to take a few drafts like this. And listen, does Will Campbell need to hit his left tackle? Absolutely. Because if he doesn't, then we're back in trouble with left tackle, right? But even if he doesn't, let's just say that he doesn't. And of course, that would be bad for everyone. But even if he doesn't, and he ends up at left guard and Wilson ends up at center, you're still walking away from this draft looking at it saying, okay, if Travion Henderson is as good as he looks, and if Kyle Williams can make some noise at wide receiver, and we have some depth pieces that we also drafted, right? In Marcus Bryant, in Joshua Farmer, in guys like that. And so I think when you start to look at it and you say, okay, if we have a few more drafts like this, now we can get competitive. Well, if you tell me that Will Campbell can be a really good left guard or left tackle, now that changes things, right? Now that changes things because we say, okay, well, now maybe we're not just competing for a playoff spot. Now we're maybe competing for something else because we hit on our first round pick and we have a bunch of depth pieces as well. And so if we can have another draft or two like that, that puts us into contention to really make some noise. And I think that's the biggest difference. But if you're going to hit on those day 2 and day 3 picks, now the middle class of that roster becomes so much better. And that insulates you with injuries because those injuries happen. And so that's the big thing for me. So anyway, I think.
And then with that too, you can sign free agents, but those guys are older and you're only going to have them at their peak for a couple of years. And,
right.
You look at guys on the roster right now, they're signing free agents to fill the holes from the guys that, they've missed on in the draft. And at a certain point, those are good Band-Aids and you can do that to fill some spots, but you can't build a contender that way. You just can't do that through free agents. You have to do it through the draft. That means hitting on your first round picks and getting a couple splash selections later in the draft. You look at teams that win the Super Bowl, a lot of these teams have guys drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds who end up as all-pros.
Cornerstone pieces. Yep.
And you look at we talk about filling out the depth on this roster. Braden Swinson came in with the 4th edge rusher spot gifted to him, as long as he could do it, with the opportunity to be a 3rd or 2nd edge rusher on this team, and as a 5th rounder, and to not even make the roster is incredibly disappointing. You know who else was picked in the 5th round? Fred Warner, best linebacker in the league.
Right.
And the fact that your pick, and obviously, he's probably not. These guys are rarely all pros, but like you're trying to do something rare. You're trying to win a championship. You're trying to be one of 32, not 16 of 32.
Right.
And to have already this year a guy you took in the top 150 not make your initial roster is disappointing. I'm like, it's when you look at this 2024 class and how bad it looks with only 3 guys left from it on the roster, and we'll see if that's the case in 24 hours with Caden Wallace and Javon Baker. I guess technically Jalen Polk is still under contract, so I guess we'll see what happens with that next year.
He doesn't care. He's never going to play another snap for the Patriots.
Yeah, and you look at like 2022, you only got 1 left. Like they are, like we said last year, they need to hit on that draft. They didn't hit on that draft. They may have gotten the quarterback. They didn't hit on the rest of it.
Right.
Hitting on this year, it becomes a need, not a want. And you need to stack draft classes. Do this a couple years in a row, and all right, that means you need Campbell to hit. Henderson looks like a hit. You need Kyle Williams to hit. You want Jared Wilson to be, a quality starter. Like you need, and some of these guys look like they're poised for roles, but other than Henderson, also none of these guys stood out in the preseason. And I guess you could say Will Campbell. I think he in the preseason games for the most part he had more good snaps than bad.
Yep.
Against poor talent, but also he won a lot of the reps.
Right. Which is what you want him to do. You want him to win those reps. You expect him to win those reps, but then he did. And so you say, okay, well, I can't knock him for going against bad players if he's winning the reps.
Yeah. So we're gonna find out on him. We got however many days until the opener now. Like,
by the way, we've been fact checked by the other Matt who says Fred Warner was drafted 70th overall in the 3rd round. Nevertheless,
who am I thinking of? The Niners drafted someone in there who was a 5th.
Was it Drake Greenlaw?
It might have been Drake Greenlaw. That's a great pull if that's him.
I don't know. Or was Drake Greenlaw?
Drake Greenlaw was a 5th rounder. He was.
Was he drafted by the Vikings?
No, he was a 49er. Greenlaw drafted 148 overall. Swinson was 146. Yeah, so that is who thank you for that. I was confusing those 2 linebackers.
Also, before we got to take a break, but before we do, what the hell is it? TD asked the question. Here we go. Where is it? There we go. N'Keal Harry, Cole Strange. Which 1st-round pick was Belichick's worst? Which, by the way, I don't think either of those guys were. I think you could make a strong argument that Dominic Easley was his worst 1st-round pick. That was in the middle of that run, and you just completely whiff on a pick, and you just set you back, right? But I think the argument, the biggest thing for me is it has to be N'Keal Harry. It has to be. Yeah. And the reason why is not because, and someone said, I'm not sure who it was. I can go back and look, but not because the position was a premium position. You needed a wide receiver. You drafted a wide receiver. Great job. The problem is that every other receiver taken in 2019 was really good. Not everyone. Obviously, that's hyperbole, but there was 4 guys taken after N'Keal Harry that were really good to absolutely incredible. And you took N'Keal Harry instead of any of those guys. And, that's where I look at it and say, man, you had the position, you got it right, but holy crap, what the hell was that? And also, Patty said Chris Canty. That's a Bill Parcells pick. That's the other Bill. That might be a Bobby Greer pick. That might have been Bobby Greer's. That might have been the first year Belichick. Parcells left in '97. But that's a great poll, Patty. But not a Belichick pick though.
I would also go if we just go by impact to the franchise. I also go Harry because of some of the residual effects of that. Mm-hmm. If you pick a receiver, let's say it's AJ Brown, Brady left because of the issues with Belichick. But he's also leaving because of the issues with Belichick, because the team wasn't going to win anymore. So why am I going to put up with this when the roster stinks by that point? Well, if Belichick drafts an all-pro receiver in the 1st round, that probably changes the way you feel about things.
Right.
And, not only for what that does, like, you had A.J. Brown to that 2019 team, and they were a Super Bowl contender that year. That might keep Brady in New England. And, you also aren't giving up a second for Mohamed Sanu.
Correct.
Might change the way you handle the Antonio Brown situation. If you have a guy who's a plug-and-play starter at wide receiver, your biggest position of need, that gets you that you might keep Brady and get another ring or two with him here in New England. And then also you have an all-pro receiver for whenever you start the next era. Whenever it's time to draft another quarterback after Brady, whenever that ends up happening for you. And, that timeline is what I'd like to live in. So here we are. I think the best argument for Strange being worse is just the process of it. The fact that Bill seemed dead set on that and traded back and then made it happen and overruled people. And he overruled people in both of those picks from everything I've read. But
yes,
I think Strange, N'Keal Harry was seen as someone who's going to go between pick 25 and pick 50 in that draft. And then he went in that range. Most people did not see Cole Strange going where he went, including people in the building. And Bill said, I'm going to do it anyway.
And that's...
and it's just like that might actually be the worst pick in terms of just in a vacuum what happened. But the impact of the Harry one to me is...
When you go back to 2020 and you take Kyle Duggar, but Antoine Winfield Jr. goes to Tampa and is an absolute stud in Tampa. Same position. Did you pick the wrong guy? That's one of those things where it's did you pick the wrong guy? The pick that they traded for Mohamed Sanu ends up being 55. It's J.K. Dobbins. The pick for 4 is A.J. Epinesa for the Bills, who just got a big contract. The pick before that is Jalen Hurts. Right, 2 picks before that's Trayvon Diggs. The pick before that's Jalen Johnson. So you're sitting here saying, God, that second round pick could have been really valuable for them, and they traded it for Mohamed freaking Sanu. And that's where you just look at it and say, yeah, if they had A.J. Brown, they're not making that trade. And so anyway, listen, we don't want to, and Patty's right. The past is the past. We should, we're excited about 2025. You should be excited about 2025. There's genuine excitement about 2025. And I think that, there should be. I think we should temper some of the expectations, but I think there should be for the most part. So
I'm excited about Drake May. I'm not sure how many. I don't know how excited to get about this team until we just see how they look week 1, because
right.
It's they might. We're gonna learn a lot right there.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, TD says that they had no choice in Sanu because Tom was pressing them, right? And you may not be wrong about that. I know that Brady wanted Sanu. They should have traded for Emmanuel Sanders, I said at the time, but nevertheless.
Yes.
But who went for way less, but that doesn't matter. Either way, even if he was pushing for Sanu, if you get A.J. Brown in the building instead of N'Keal Harry, and A.J. Brown does what he does his rookie year in Tennessee, Tom Brady's not asking you to make a move because he has a number 1 wide receiver. So you don't need Mohamed Sanu on the team because you already have a good receiver on the team in A.J. Brown. Yeah. And that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah. Yep. I agreed. All right. Do an ad break and then get back?
Let's do it. This episode, of course, is brought to you by Prize Picks. Preseason football is underway and college football is here. So don't miss any of the action on Prize Picks. Again, it's simple to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Now, all withdrawals and deposits are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and a ton more. And again, they're quick, 15 minutes. Somewhere 15, 20 minutes is great. It's the best ways to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Now, what are you going to do? Download the app Prize Picks. Put in the promo code CLNS. When you play your first $5 lineup, you'll get $50 in lineups instantly. Once again, download the app Prize Picks. Put in the promo code CLNS, and you get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. Are there any? Who are the other guys that we'd like to talk about? Marcus Epps, I feel like we don't even have to discuss. Like that's.
I think the only notable thing with Epps, I think we expected him to miss if Duggar was staying. It's just that he requested out.
Yeah,
interesting. I don't really know what he expected to happen coming here, signing behind Jalen Hawkins, someone in that same role, plus Duggar, Peppers, and you got Schooler and Pettis in the building too.
Yeah,
someone was always going to get the short straw there, and then you add in drafting Woodson later. It's like we're not going to be enough reps to go around. All these guys are good enough for an NFL roster.
100%. And I think Woodson has kind of earned his way into that starting role, and so it's interesting. I'm fascinated in that, and we'll see kind of how that goes. I guess related to safety. Linebacker, right? Marte Mapu stays on the roster. You had him on the roster. I did not. But I'm happy to see him on the roster. I'm happy to see him at linebacker. Obviously, they saw some good things from him. They think that they can develop him into the player that they want him to be. And so I'm hoping that they can turn him into a semi-reliable inside linebacker. I don't know if he can, but I'm hoping that they can.
Well, Vrabel, I think this is yesterday when he was talking. I think he kind of hinted that Mapu made the roster because he talked about him being a core special teamer. I don't think you talk about a guy like that and then cut him the next day, typically. Talk about how hard he worked to return, showing his desire to earn a role. It's a tweet from Taylor Kyles here. Those are all things that he likes in his players, and Mapu is a scheme fit if he can play well. If he can put on just enough weight to be able to take on blocks while also retaining that coverage ability, he's a great fit in this game. He just has to show he can do that and stay healthy. I do wonder if he gets a little audition here over the coming weeks, and then, when Tavai comes back, they reevaluate where they're at the position. So, and they play kind of different roles. I think I wouldn't expect them to play that position the same way or be put in the same spot on the field. But I think Mapu earned it there. If we're talking core special teamers, do we talk kicking battle here?
We can certainly talk kicking battle. I think before we get to the kicking battle, core special teamer Javon Baker earned his spot on the roster. Right? He earned it. Flat out, Javon Baker earned his spot on the roster. It's not as a wide receiver, right? But again, it's a lot of guys have made a living playing special teams. And if that's what Javon Baker is, credit to him for putting his head down and saying, I'm going to do this. He didn't have to do that. He didn't play special teams at UCF. Like he's done this and figured it out. He didn't do it last year here. He became a gunner this year and did it well enough to get himself on a roster. And so, that's work that deserves credit. He deserves credit for that work. Again, that's not wide receiver. It's not his actual position, but it doesn't matter because he's on the roster. And I think, he showed that he was valuable enough that they said, we don't care how many receivers we're keeping. We're keeping Baker too, because he needs to play special teams for us. Again, maybe he's never plays wide receiver for us. Who cares? Because he's a good special teams player.
I will say I don't want to speak too strongly on the Baker thing because I think there's a real chance he isn't on this roster this time tomorrow. I think he earned being one of the top 53 guys of the players who were in camp. Whether he's one of the top 53 guys compared to guys who are available on the waiver wire, we will see. I don't think he'd be the first guy to go. I suspect Bourne would go before him. Duggar, it sounds like they don't want to cut Duggar. It sounds like they want to keep him in the building. Like basically, if they're going to have to pay for him, they'd rather just keep him and see if they can fix him. And otherwise, if someone is willing to take a lot of the money, will offload him, which makes sense. So, maybe Baker's like the second guy.
I just think that special teams wise, you're talking about core special teams wise, there's nobody else that does what he does on special teams. It's him and Brendan Schooler are the two gunners. The backup gunners were like Kobe Minor, who's cut, And like, I don't even know who else is playing. Like, I don't know. Like, did anyone else even play gunner? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and again, not that gunner is the most important position ever, but again, if you're telling me that Brendan Schooler's on the roster because he's so good at special teams, well, then isn't there a spot for Javon Baker too? You know, like, and I'm going to pick up
Well, I
some
think
random, you know
I
what I
do
mean?
think
Pick up some
Schooler
random
is
guy on the roster.
significantly. I will say this: like Schooler plays every aspect of special teams essentially. Baker right now it looks to be just a gunner. Like we'll see what he can turn into. I wouldn't put him in Schooler's category yet
Yeah.
or his tier yet because it's
No, of course not.
if
And I'm not trying to do that.
if Javon Baker gets hurt, I'm sure you can throw like Alex Austin or I don't know Del Pettis or somebody in that role or Matt Collins, and they can go do it. So I think you can backfill that pretty easily if you want to. It's not, you can get guys to do it at an average level pretty easily, I would think. So, and that's what you pay your special teams coach for. So, we'll see. And I think Baker's not locked into this. You look at guys who might be off this roster in a little bit. I think Baker's one of them. I think Caden Wallace is one of them. I think Elijah Ponder is one of them, and I think Kendrick Bourne is one of them, and maybe Jack Westover. I think those are the 5 that come to mind, depending on who's available. Especially because I think there might be some good tight ends on the waiver wire, and they might claim someone, Jakob Johnson at fullback, if they want to bring him back into the fold. So Westover might go because they want to bring some of these other guys in, or they might move on from Baker or Bourne and say we're going to just add Jakob Johnson, and Bourne you're gone, or Baker you're gone, or Elisha Ponder you're gone because he can play fullback for us, and we can just slot him in, and we know exactly what's going on. So, we'll see where we land there. I'm curious what moves they're going to make. I was also looking at guys who are on the waiver wire who might be interesting. Going to bring some of these names up.
Absolutely.
Gabe Murphy is an edge defender for the Vikings. That's who Will Campbell went up against a lot in the preseason game, and I thought he had some good reps. A lot of Vikings fans liked Murphy and were surprised he got cut. So I think that's an interesting one to me. I don't think we take him, but Chris Paul Jr., a.k.a. Pooh Paul, is a linebacker from this class. I know people liked him. I didn't like him as much, and he didn't make the roster. I didn't think he was athletic enough.
Kansas, right? Is he from Kansas? No. That was the guard from Kansas I was thinking of. I feel like his last name was Paul too, though. But maybe
there were a couple of them. But he's supposed to be like a coverage linebacker. And that's a guy where it's like Mapu may have made the roster, and they're going to say, actually, there's this other guy we like better. I think they would have picked him if they liked him that much, but probably not. Jalen Armour Davis got cut from, I believe, the Ravens. He's a gunner, I believe. He's a corner. He's very athletic, plays special teams. I wouldn't be surprised if they threw in a flyer on him. I guess Kenyon Green could be on this list.
Yeah.
Offensive line, I don't think so because he's
probably
been a couple stops and hasn't played well. But those are a couple names. And then I know that there's like a million tight ends. I don't have a list in front of me. I know Jack Wiley's on that list, and Andrew Wiley?
Andrew Wiley.
And he played with Vrabel in Tennessee. So
and there's also was it the rookie tight end from Iowa, I believe, was cut as well.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
What the heck's his name? Lachey? Was it Luke Lachey?
Oh, yeah.
I believe that he was cut today. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong with that, but I'm fairly positive that was the case.
Malik Cunningham got cut today. If anyone's interested in him.
Ooh, he could be our QB of the future. Man. Dan. So Boss GM just threw up a few. So Skinner isn't available unless we want to. You could cut Vidarian Lowe, but Skinner's not on the waiver wire, so you'd have to sign him to the active roster. And I guess all these guys you'd have to bring on the other roster. But
the Lions, just looking at what Lions fans and reporters were saying, this seems like the kind of wink nod thing the Patriots would do, where they'd cut a veteran who wouldn't go through waivers just to get someone onto the roster to IR and then bring back whoever it was. I think Skinner ends up staying in.
I would agree with that, too. And Trent Brown, hell no. Again, Lachey, who was I guess he was a 7th round pick from Iowa this year. And Isaiah Simmons is a guy that I loved Isaiah Simmons so much. But he just doesn't. I'm sorry. Like he's proven over and over and over and over and over that he can't play. And so if that's the case, then I'm all set. We just don't need to bring in another
squad. Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Some other. I'm just reading through cuts right now. Malachi Corley, your guy. I don't think he's fit in New England.
He doesn't fit here. No, he doesn't.
Especially with Pop and Efton Chisholm already in the slot role. I just don't think there's a spot for him.
And with Marcus Jones and Travion Henderson being good returners, there's nothing here for him.
Yeah. Jalen Reagor got cut by the Chargers. That's tough for him.
Yeah.
That's not a great QB room at all. Let's see. Oh, A.T. Perry didn't make the Broncos. He is someone I liked a lot coming out. He's actually on the Dynasty team, so I got rid of him. Will Sherman. That's got to be the same guy, right? That we drafted.
It's yeah.
Caught by the Broncos. So many guys who were cut.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, no one really jumped off the page at me while I looked at it and said,
"Bailey Zappi."
Yeah, Jesus Christ, dude.
One thing I will say is this: people keep talking about third quarterbacks and the quarterback situation. I don't think there's any point in removing any of the guys we have on the roster right now for a third quarterback who's not gonna be better than Dobbs. Like Dobbs isn't good, but that's fine. He's a backup quarterback. Just sign literally anyone to the practice squad, and who cares?
Well, and that's the big thing for me, right? And people can talk about Tommy DeVito, and if you want Tommy DeVito on the team, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It just means you're cutting Josh Dobbs, and that's okay. Like if you look at it and say we want Tommy DeVito instead of Josh Dobbs, fine. If you say we want Tommy DeVito on our practice squad, fine. That's fine. And by the way, Joe Milton, miss me with all the Joe Milton talk. Just miss me with all of it. I have
Dobbs is significantly better than Joe Milton.
I have zero patience for it. Just because Joe Milton throw ball far, that doesn't mean anything, dude. And I always go back to it's just so perfect. It was Barth, right? Was it Barth or Czar that had the quote about him? I can't remember either way. But if you need someone to throw the ball 60 yards, he can throw the ball 60 yards. If you need someone to throw the ball 10 yards, he can throw the ball 60 yards. That's just like he has no touch. He can't get the ball to anyone. He's a terrible quarterback. He's been playing football at a high level for a long time, and he sucks. He sucks. And
with a number of good coaches.
Correct.
He worked in that. He worked with Jim Harbaugh. And he worked in that Tennessee offense that is very favorable for quarterbacks. And he worked with, for all the issues in New England last season. Drake May was fine,
right?
Like Milton was not. Did he make the team? Okay, so he ended up beating out Will Grier for the backup job in Dallas. So shout out to him, but that's a low bar. Will Grier and Milton are both worse than Dobbs is.
And I also think. Here's something really simple. I know it's a little hard to understand. I get it. I know it's a little hard to understand. Josh Dobbs, prepare. It's a good thing you're sitting down, Matt. It's a good thing you're sitting down. Josh Dobbs is not a good quarterback.
Yeah.
He's not. I know that's shocking to some of you. The backup quarterback for the Patriots isn't good. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. It doesn't make a difference. Who cares if Josh Dobbs is throwing hospital balls? I don't care. You shouldn't care either. None of you should care. It doesn't matter. If Drake May gets hurt, the season's over. So what difference does it make? It just makes no difference. Listen, if Drake May gets hurt and you want the Patriots to trade for a quarterback or sign a quarterback because you think he's better than Josh Dobbs, fine. Yeah. I'll support it. But until then, why do we care who the backup quarterback is? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know if they play musical chairs with the backup quarterback spot all year. That's fine with me. But like, you're just not gonna have a good player in that slot. So like, I'm not. You don't need to win. So like, I'm just not really. Like
The
I didn't.
Saints,
I mean, I rarely cared about the backup quarterback when it was like Brady here and we're fighting for championships.
right?
Like we are just trying to get out of last place right now.
Right.
Also, Dobbs with like the hospital balls and stuff. Like I don't find me like the only quarterbacks that you're gonna find to be a backup who don't throw the occasional hospital ball are guys who are too scared to throw the ball down the field at all.
That's
I'll take the guy who might throw a receiver into traffic over a guy who will never throw the ball down the field if I'm trying to win football games.
And the Saints are starting Spencer Rattler at quarterback. There are not 32 good quarterbacks in the league. There aren't.
Dobbs might start for the Saints.
He really could theoretically start for the Saints. And so, again, it's just one of those things where I look at it and say, we have a veteran. You don't have to think about him. He's just there. If he sucks and God forbid something happens to Drake May, then sure, by all means, replace him. But for right now, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So don't waste your time thinking about Josh Dobbs. It doesn't make a difference because once the season starts, 0 people are going to talk about Josh Dobbs all year long unless the unthinkable happens. And then if that happens, the season's over anyway, so it doesn't matter. And you know what? Don't replace Josh Dobbs because I want to lose every game. You know what? I take that back. Replace Josh Dobbs with something even worse because I want to lose every game if Drake May gets hurt. There's no point in winning.
Yeah. Well, like I'm fine with Josh Dobbs as the backup. And if they cut Josh Dobbs and sign Danny DeVito, I'm fine with Danny DeVito as the backup or like
correct.
Whatever you want to do. I don't.
Listen, you could sign Tommy DeVito. You could sign Danny DeVito for all I care. It doesn't matter. I really don't care if Danny DeVito could be the backup. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm mixing up Danny Dimes and Tommy DeVito there for things that might matter. If we're talking Giants, Greg Dulcich, their tight end, who I think led them in. Yeah. I think led everyone in touchdowns this preseason. They cut. Just like we need tight end depth, so that interests me. Bryson Nesbitt, who played with Drake May, didn't make the cut. Farrah Brown didn't make the cut, and Scotty Washington didn't make the cut. We're doing former Patriots here.
Scotty Wash.
Yeah. So I think Cameron Latu. There's some tight ends out there that are interesting. Josh Wiley. So I think you could add someone if you want a tight end. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You were right about Josh Wiley, by the way. Who the hell is Andrew Wiley?
Is that a tackle? Do they have a brother?
I thought it was. Yep. He's a tackle on. Well, I guess he's a guard technically on the Commanders. Okay. Well, but they're not. Their names are spelled differently, so they're not related.
Okay.
So
yeah, 2 of those guys make that.
There you go.
But yeah, so we'll see what they decide. I'm curious what 4:00 tomorrow looks like when we find out who the claimants were. Patriots are at the top of that list, so
yes, they are.
They're 4th on that list.
Well, yeah, of course not number 1, but nevertheless, yeah.
Same as the draft order. So we'll see if they do anything. I'm curious if any Patriots get claimed. I think Swinston's the obvious one.
Yeah,
Cole Strange gets claimed somewhere. I think that's intriguing to me. Anyone else where you're like, I wonder where they land?
Patriots-wise, I doubt it. I just don't think I don't think anyone else I look at as an actual NFL player.
Does Marcus Epps go through waivers? If he's eligible to get claimed, he's someone who I think belongs on a roster. So I'm curious if he lands somewhere.
Yeah, he could. He might land somewhere. He might be right about that. And I think I look at Cole Strange, and not that Cole Strange is making a ton of money, but he is at least getting paid like a first-round pick. And so, that's a situation where I could look at. All right, he passes through waivers, and then someone either signs him to a small deal or signs him into their practice squad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think like Jeremiah Webbs and John Giles are guys from I thought they played well enough to be on the practice squad. I don't think they get claimed, but maybe someone does something. Same with DeMondre Jacobs is I don't think he gets claimed, but with how bad tackle positions are, maybe someone's like, yeah, we'll take a chance and bring him onto the roster. That's about it, though.
The biggest thing.
Romo, I don't think can get claimed. I think
No?
I think he hits free agency. I wonder if they keep him around on the practice squad as a backup option.
I hope that they do. I hope that they do. I think it makes sense to keep him around, you know? And Deshaun's right. I would like to see both Giles and Webb back in the practice squad. We'll see if they've cleared through waivers. We'll see if they want them back in the practice squad. But I think that that's the case. I also think I wouldn't be surprised to see Jack Westover get cut and have them bring in an actual fullback. He's been fine at fullback, but a few fullbacks got cut. I wonder if they bring in a fullback that they think they can work with. He's been okay.
Well, they could keep Westover, cut Bourne, and add a fullback here too, which
that is also true.
Might be the more likely option.
Yeah.
I only have one other thing if we're run at the end here.
Yeah.
Just a tweet from Mark Daniels that I thought was important. He goes that Zach Cox had tweeted out the draft misses from 21 to 24. Mm-hmm. Mark Daniels points out, I feel like it's hard to miss on this many interior offensive linemen. 5 drafted in the last 4 years in the first 5 rounds, none of them left on the roster.
Brutal.
That to me is because that's a position that winning teams find day 2, day 3, and you find playable starters and depth there. And you're just finding that's something the dynasty era Patriots did for a while. You don't really talk about the fact that like the 03 and 04 Patriots had some churn on the offensive line because everyone they put in there was fine. They got the job done. And this has been the opposite. It has been kind of astonishing to watch player after player come in here on the interior of the line with the same issues and never get better. And it's like, okay, what are you evaluating and what are you coaching? Because you keep drafting guys with the same issues and then not fixing them.
Drives me nuts. Yep.
Yeah. And like Caden Wallace is still here, drafted as a tackle, now playing guard. We'll see how much longer he's here if they decide to bring in someone else at guard. If he turns into something, that would be awesome. I also think, if there's a situation where Caden Wallace is starting for you at left guard, that might be a problem because that might mean things have not gone as well with Jared Wilson as you were expecting.
Yes.
Unless Wilson has won the center job at that point.
Well, I was going to say the only situation that would you could look at that is that Bradbury gets hurt or Bradbury is just terrible and they have to move Wilson to center. And then in that situation, you look at it and say, all right, well, if Wallace is playing left guard for us, it's not the end of the world. But that's, not great.
I mean, some of these players that they have missed on, Will Sherman, we just talked about the depth offensive line. He was deeper in the draft, but obviously Cole Strange is going to be the big one. I put it this way, it doesn't feel like they have taken an offensive lineman in the draft and had him get better with the team since Michael Wenu. That's the last guy I can think of. And you can't win football games if you go half a decade without drafting offensive line well. I mean, that's a death knell. You're not going to win football games when your offensive line is guaranteed to be one of the 5 worst in the NFL, and which it's going to be if you can't draft them. So, and hopefully that's changing this year because you need 2 hits in the top 100. You need both these guys to pan out. And even then, that gets you closer to the baseline. You need more hits. You're going to have to keep throwing picks at the problem until you find guys. There's no other way out of that. Missing on Andrew So and Mafia all in the same class is it's another one that's horrendous. Like in theory, it should be half your starting line right now, and none of them are even here anymore.
Right. And I
think Jake Andrews is going to be starting. Is he starting elsewhere?
No, he isn't, is he?
Where did he end up? He's in Houston. Did he win the starting job there? He might have. Yeah, he's going to be starting in Houston.
Really?
Yep. By the way, TD asked if the Patriots fill their practice squad. I don't think they have a practice squad. I think practice squad signing that start tomorrow. I don't think you can start signing players to the practice squad until after
waivers has to clear. I think waivers close at noon, and then after waivers clears, then you can sign guys to your practice squad.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the time. Oh yeah, I forgot it's noon tomorrow, not 4:00. So
yeah.
Yeah, so in like 13 hours, we're going to have some answers to the questions we're asking on here.
Correct. Yep. So,
yeah. And Boss GM, I think this is a good note to end on. Guard has to be one of the easiest positions to hit on. It is truly amazing how they missed. So I think that's something up right there.
100%. It's one of those things that like you just feel like there are third and fourth round and fifth round guards that hit all the time. And when you take enough of them, you just feel like you have to hit on one or two of them. And so then what the question becomes is it the process, or is it the way you're teaching the guys, or what is it that you're drafting all these guys and missing on all of them? And that's really difficult.
Which I will say here, like, so one of the guys, like they drafted Yeldafro Holt. He didn't turn into anything in New England, bounces around the league and turns up elsewhere as a good player. If that happens with Jake Andrews here, like we talked about the center position being a position of need for New England. And with Ben Brown, Cole Strange, Jared Wilson, Garrett Bradbury, they said there's no room for you, Jake Andrews, and cut him at the end of April. And he got claimed off waivers by Houston and is now starting for them. I don't expect him to be a good player. I think that's going to be a terrible offensive line. But if he turns out to be a good player for them and the Patriots struggle at center, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, it's just that's the hard part, right? And it's one of those things. That's a Vrabel decision, right? That's not the Patriots necessarily. And that's not the old regime. It's
the new regime.
That's now the new regime where you say, man, like this is, that makes it difficult. And again, at that point, they hadn't let go of David Andrews yet. I don't believe. So you still had David Andrews on the roster. I think I might be wrong about that though, but either way, I didn't like to see it. And I don't know if Jake Andrews is ever going to be good, but it's just, that's not, I don't know.
And this is hypothetical because we don't know how our center play is going to be this year. Maybe Jared Wilson turns into a good center. Maybe Ben Brown turns into a good center for you. And it's a moot point. If Jake Andrews turns into a good center or even a league average center, I mean, that's been the other issue. When they're missing on picks, they're missing badly. They're getting guys who aren't on NFL rosters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're getting, all right, this guy's a bad starter, but he's at least a starter. They're not getting that.
Correct.
Truly, like you're getting guys you can't even put on the roster these days. So,
well, that's what it comes down to. Like I said, that's where it's the bottom half of the roster has struggled so much because you're drafting guys that aren't even on your roster anymore. And that's difficult. So TD's so funny because he says it's a new regime with the same GM, but then he says that Wilson is special. But that couldn't have been the same GM that drafted all those terrible players. Drafted Wilson. That can't be right. But, what are you going to do? I don't know. It's just the way it is, I guess. I'm sure he'll find a way to talk his way out of that one. But, nevertheless. So, all right, that's what we got. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. I'm exhausted.
It won't be the two of us, but the next episode for this show will be preview for week 1.
Preview for week 1. Yes, it will be next week. Probably Monday, maybe Tuesday.
And then the next episode I'm on will be reacting to first real Patriots football game.
Yeah, look at that. By the way,
I'll be on the West Coast next week with some weird hours. So,
by the way, I told you this is great. TD says that's not Wolf's draft. That was Vrabel's draft. Good one, Pat. Oh, okay. So Vrabel had the draft, but wait a second. Vrabel had the draft, but Wolf cut Andrews. Okay. So now we know. Vrabel does the drafting, but Wolf signs all the free agents and cuts everyone. So. That's
I think every move that has happened since Vrabel got here is a Vrabel move.
That's correct. That is the correct take. Matter of fact, Greg Bedard has said that. Like, this is Vrabel and Ryan Cowden. Like,
and Stretch.
And Elliot Wolf is here, and he's got a voice. But those three are the ones that are making the decision. And I do, by the way, think that Elliot Wolf's a pretty good scout. Maybe he just isn't a top dog. And if they think he's a pretty good scout, but he's not a top dog, then leave him as a scout and go from there.
I would think he should better as like an executor, like just being told what to do, go do
Right.
this.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
I just don't think they're gonna. I think it'll be like Bobby Guerrero, where Guerrero was here for 1 year with Belichick and then left. I think that'll probably end up being a similar thing here with Wolf, where he's gone after the season.
Yeah. Yep. And that's okay.
So
Yeah, I got no
that's
problem
fine
with
by
that.
me. I got no
So,
love for the guy, so
yeah,
it's not
it is
all
what
his
it is.
fault. But there's nothing he's done that's earned.
Well,
earned
that's
a
the
lot of-
thing. It's definitely not all his fault, but at the same time, he certainly didn't help the situation. So,
Nope.
you know,
I don't
that's
need
the way
to
it
see
goes.
more of that.
So all right. Well, that's what we got. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it, guys. Be good to each other and go Pats.